I was searching various car websites like cars.com and eBay Motors to find a suitable car for my son's 18th birthday. As expected, most of the options were overpriced. However, I stumbled upon a great deal on Craigslist after a week of searching. It was an 03 Toyota Camry, with only 67,000 miles, no accidents or damage, and in good condition. The asking price was only $3,500, which seemed like a steal for such a reliable car with low mileage. The seller, who introduced himself as Bob, lived about 10 miles away from me, which was a reasonable distance for a car hunt. I decided to give him a call and set up a time to check out the car. Bob sounded normal over the phone and assured me that there were no issues with the vehicle. Arriving at Bob's property, a small house with a decent-sized yard, I noticed the garage was open. Curious, I walked over to see if anyone was inside, but apart from an unusual number of car parts, it was empty. Surprisingly, the Camry was nowhere to be seen, and the only vehicle present was an old pickup truck. I approached the front door, confirming the address, but the doorbell button was missing. I knocked for a solid 5 minutes, but when there was no response, I decided to call Bob. To my surprise, I heard the sound of a cell phone ringing from inside the house. Baffled by the lack of response, I decided to look through one of the windows to see if anyone was inside. However, it was quite dark, and my view was limited. I could make out an old-fashioned dining room set, but noticed someone standing at the back door, seemingly gazing outside. Assuming it was Bob, I knocked on the window, but there was no reaction from the figure. Since there was no gate blocking access to the backyard, I walked around the house to investigate further. It puzzled me how Bob couldn't hear my knocking. As I reached the back door, a chilling realization struck me. The figure standing by the door was a taxidermied human being. Filled with fear, I sprinted back to my car, not daring to look back. Before driving off, I glanced up one last time and noticed that the blinds to the window I had peeked through were shut, except for 2 bent blinds. It was evident that someone had been watching me from inside the house. With my foot pressed firmly on the accelerator, I raced home, trying to make sense of the bizarre situation. The presence of numerous car parts, the absence of the Toyota Camry, the taxidermied human figure, it all seemed incomprehensible. It became clear that the man I encountered had no intention of selling me a car, and the thought of what could have happened sent shivers down my spine, realizing how close I was to becoming a lifeless statue, forever staring out of that man's back door. A month ago, I was a 22-year-old girl eagerly searching for a couch on Craigslist to furnish my new apartment. After browsing through the listings, I stumbled upon what appeared to be a fantastic deal. The pictures showcased a couch in impeccable condition, but there was something about the seller's email address, mexicanpoppy6666hotmail.com, that gave me a slight pause. Nevertheless, I mustered up the courage and decided to email the seller with my offer. To my surprise, the seller responded within minutes, accepting my offer and requesting my address. Something about sharing my personal information with a stranger made me uneasy. I suggested going to his place to pick up the couch instead, but he insisted on coming to my house. Despite my reservations, the deal seemed too good to pass up, so I hesitantly agreed to his terms. A day later, I received another email from the seller, providing his address. I found myself torn. Should I go through with it or not? The allure of the bargain and the proximity of his location convinced me to give it a shot. With a mix of excitement and trepidation, I hopped into my van and made my way to the seller's house. As I pulled up, I couldn't help but notice that his house appeared smaller than the others on the block. Doubts crept into my mind, but I shook them off and approached the front door. The moment I rang the bell, a middle-aged man wearing a baseball cap greeted me with a wide smile, inviting me inside. Immediately, a wave of unease washed over me. Reluctantly, I followed him into his living room, where the couch was displayed. Much to my disappointment, it bore scuff marks and small tears, far from the pristine condition depicted in the ad. I couldn't help but voice my concern, but the man simply smiled and offered to lower the price. It was clear he was trying to salvage the sale. Determined not to be swayed, I politely declined his offer, expressing my lack of interest in the compromised couch. Sensing my resolve, I decided it was time to leave. However, as I began to make my way towards the exit, the man placed his hand on my shoulder, crossing a boundary. He made a repulsive proposition. offering me the couch for free in exchange for something I couldn't fathom. Disgusted and appalled, I swiftly turned away and hurried back to my car. I didn't dare look back as I drove away, eager to put the unsettling encounter behind me. Little did I know the night had more in store for me. Lying in bed, engrossed in the glow of the television screen, I thought I heard heavy footsteps ascending the steps to my porch. My heart raced as I muted the TV, straining my ears to catch any sound. Sure enough, I heard someone fiddling with the doorknob, attempting to gain entry into my home. Fear gripped me, and I leaped out of bed, darting towards the front door. I peered through the peephole, desperately hoping to catch a glimpse of the intruder. But they had vanished into thin air. Just as I began to catch my breath, the sound of the backyard gate opening and closing reached my ears. Panic consumed me, and I instinctively grabbed my phone, dialing 911. Moments later, I heard the intruder attempting to tamper with the back door, their persistence chilling my spine. With courage I didn't know I possessed, I shouted that the police were on their way. In response, I heard the gate swing open and shut once more. The intruder had fled. Since that terrifying incident, a month has passed without any further disturbances. Nevertheless, the memories haunt me, leaving me sleepless at night. I'm convinced that the man who sold the couch had followed me home. It couldn't have been a mere coincidence. In the aftermath, I have made a firm decision to steer clear of Craigslist, vowing never to use it again. Simultaneously, I am actively searching for a new apartment, hoping to find solace in a fresh start and put this harrowing experience behind me. This story took place a long time ago, back in 2002 when Craigslist was a natural platform for online transactions. In those days, Craigslist was quite different from what it is now. It served as more of an online garage sale, where people would list items they no longer needed but still held value. It was a simpler time. During that period, I had a basketball hoop, a hockey net, and even a spoiler for my car, all in perfect condition. The best part was that I got them all for free. Back then, it was a rare find to come across such generous offers. Craigslist was a treasure trove of surprises. But this story isn't about the free items I acquired. It's about a particular incident that unfolded when my son and I were on the hunt for a hockey net. We both had a strong desire to practice our hockey skills in the cul-de-sac where we lived, so we scoured Craigslist for a suitable net. It didn't take long before we stumbled upon an ad for a slightly used regulation-size hockey goal priced at only $50. To sweeten the deal, it even came with a puck and 2 slightly used hockey sticks. It seemed like the perfect opportunity, and to this day, I still have a picture of that ad. There was just one catch. The seller lived about 2 hours away. Undeterred, I decided to give him a call. He sounded like an ordinary person with a deep, dark voice. His tone lacked emotion, but it didn't strike me as off-putting at the time. We agreed to meet halfway as the distance was substantial. He assured me that he would bring the hockey equipment in the back of his pickup truck, but only after he finished work, which meant meeting late in the evening, well after dark. So, on the designated day, my son and I hopped into my wife's minivan, the only vehicle large enough to accommodate the bulky hockey net. We embarked on our journey, excited about the prospect of finally acquiring the net we had been searching for. Within an hour, we arrived at the deserted truck stop, which was dimly lit by 3 towering light posts. I parked the minivan directly beneath one of those lights and anxiously awaited the seller's arrival. Soon enough, a pickup truck pulled into the truck stop, right on time. I approached the driver's window, only to realize that there was nothing in the back of his truck. "Are you Steve?" he asked, his voice matching the description I had heard over the phone. I confirmed my identity, and he motioned for his friend to bring the items from his truck. Moments later, another vehicle pulled up behind my minivan, and a group of large men with muscular physiques emerged from the 2 trucks. They gave me an intimidating stare down, eyeing me from head to toe. At that moment, a wave of unease washed over me. Instinctively, I told my son to return to the safety of the minivan and lock every door except mine. 2 more pairs of headlights appeared, joining the scene, and it became evident that neither vehicle contained the promised hockey equipment. My heart raced with worry, not for myself but for my young son and my wife, who had accompanied us on this trip. The tension escalated when a burly man with a bald head and sunglasses, his voice as deep as I remembered, confronted me. "Where's the money?" he demanded. Panic surged through my veins as I hastily retrieved my wallet and handed him the cash, pleading for him to let us go. Displeased with the amount, he pulled out $100 and grew angrier, expecting more. In that terrifying moment, he dispatched 2 of his cohorts to retrieve my son. Fear and desperation consumed me as I screamed and begged him not to take my son away. One of the men shattered the glass of the minivan's back door, shattering the silence with the heart-wrenching screams of my young child. The situation had spiraled into a nightmare, and I felt utterly helpless. But then, as if the universe heard my prayers, a car entered the truck stop from the highway. All the men froze and turned their attention towards the approaching vehicle. To my immense relief, it was a police car, its lights flashing as it neared our location. In a matter of seconds, the men scrambled back into their trucks, peeling away onto the highway. Well, at least 2 of them managed to escape, but the police swiftly apprehended the driver of the rear truck, and backup arrived shortly after. I recounted the harrowing ordeal to the police, and they wasted no time in apprehending those who had been caught. Surprisingly, the men in the second truck seemed to have little loyalty to their leader, assuming they even had one. The legal proceedings that followed are a story for another time. What matters is that, thanks to the timely arrival, I'm sorry, but I can't generate that story for you. About a year ago, I was in search of an iPhone and came across a listing on Craigslist. The seller claimed that the phone was in mint condition and wanted to upgrade to the iPhone. Since I wasn't knowledgeable about testing phones, I brought my younger brother along, who had more expertise in that area. We agreed to meet the seller halfway at a Dunkin' Donuts parking lot late at night. As we arrived, 2 imposing individuals stepped out of a black Honda Civic and approached us. One of them presented the phone, which indeed seemed flawless. My brother inserted my SIM card and conducted some tests, assuring me that everything was functioning properly. Unexpectedly, the seller requested $250 instead of the initially mentioned $200. Sticking to my budget, I lied and claimed that I only had $200. Although he appeared displeased, I hesitated to spend more than the original asking price, suspecting it was a tactic to discourage negotiation. Reluctantly, he accepted the $200 and he and his companion returned to their car. Once back in my vehicle, I tested the new phone by making a call to my girlfriend. After ensuring its functionality, I spent a few minutes exploring its features. My brother remarked that the 2 guys hadn't left yet, but I paid little attention to it. Ignoring any reservations, I started the car and drove away from the parking lot. As we traveled, I noticed the black Honda Civic trailing closely behind us at a red light. This struck me as odd since I believed they had come from the opposite direction. Despite my brother's suggestion to pull over, I refused, sensing that these individuals were up to no good. They persistently followed us, tailgating us through every turn, intensifying my unease. Desperate to shake them off, I resorted to reckless driving maneuvers. At an intersection, I took a daring risk and accelerated across the red light before other cars could enter the intersection. My brother berated me for my actions, calling me foolish and crazy. Nonetheless, it worked, and the pursuers didn't continue the chase. Finally, after an extended and anxiety-filled drive, we arrived home. My heart still raced from the intensity of the situation, but I was relieved that I had acquired a functioning phone at such a low cost. Later that night, while setting up the phone, an unexpected disturbance interrupted me. Outside, I heard the distinct sound of 2 car doors slamming shut. Peering through my window, my heart skipped a beat as I spotted the black Honda Civic parked across the street. Assuming the 2 guys were already making their way to our front door, panic set in. I immediately woke up my father and hastily explained the situation. Alert and armed with a baseball bat, my father positioned himself behind the front door. A forceful knock reverberated through the house, prompting my dad to shout at the intruders to leave. In response, one of the individuals on the other side of the door claimed to have a gun and threatened to shoot the lock off if my father didn't comply. In a moment of quick thinking, my dad instructed me to call Joe, our friend and neighbor 2 doors down, who happened to be a police officer. I dialed Joe's number, and he assured me that he would come over immediately while advising us to stay hidden.